Welcome to the TechLink Health Podcast, an on-demand source for the top trending healthcare topics and insights. Delivered by key opinion and emerging leaders and as featured on the TechLink Health app. The healthcare industry is rapidly evolving, so our goal is to connect listeners to the most relevant insights, ranging from digital health to financial well-being to interesting side gigs. For more details, visit www.techlink.health.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the TechLink Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Sarah Saman, and I'll be hosting this episode. Today's episode focuses on the connection between music and mental well-being and how harnessing the power of technology can help turn this time-tested remedy into a medical-grade solution. The topic is timely as mental health continues to be a fundamental part of holistic health and longevity, and particularly as many look towards new normals in a post-pandemic world. This episode's guest is Dr. Yasmin Van Wilt, creator of medical-grade music and founder of Neuro-Positive, a company that is innovating in the medical-grade music space. The Neuro-Positive mission is simple: to harness the power of music to ease emotional suffering and to create many music products that people from every walk of life can utilize to build greater emotional fitness. The solution has been developed in partnership with research institutions such as Neuro-Tech and Columbia University. It goes without saying that Yasmin and the Neuro-Positive team have an innovative approach to mental well-being. So without further delay, we're excited to welcome Yasmin to the podcast. Yasmin, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here.
So to start with, give our listeners some background and take a moment to introduce yourself in a bit more detail and tell us about your journey into medical grade music.
Thank you, Sarah. My journey came here because I was looking for a solution for myself. As a young child that was autistic, I was noticing that playing music was helping me in understanding my own emotions and to also communicate with others. And as I grew older and received grants for further study and travel and for professional development, this fascination and understanding led to my finding a way to quantify and qualify what music, how, and when that music could be utilized to address problems with mental health, emotional well-being, emotional fitness. And so that led to academic pursuit and then further grants and time at Columbia University, psychiatry and global mental health, and actually as a professional musician and recording artist. And then ultimately to getting venture capital funding through an academic post at Neuro-Tech that enabled me to spin out that academic pursuit to a company. And then ultimately patented the technology, built the software out, tested it with patients at Weill Cornell, and now being ready to go to market widely at scale.
Wow, that's a fascinating background. Thank you so much for sharing that. The thought of medical grade music is really interesting in so many ways, yet also familiar in a sense in a historical context, as music has always played a role in promoting well-being. So let's talk some more about this. Did historical references play a role in the creation? And then tell us a little bit more about how this technology works with that context in mind.
That's a really interesting question, Sarah. Thank you for addressing that. So, music has played a formative role in many aspects of human life for millennia. Yet, not every avenue of utilization was directly for, I would say, healing or health-related purposes. There were also directives addressed actually at rousing emotions for war and in welcoming new births, in marking marriage, in formalizing and celebrating a life after a person had passed. And then, of course, we look at other cultures in which music had a very direct impact in really rallying communities and bringing people together and creating or fomenting a shared sense of identity. And across these different sectors, music as a form of emotional healing or emotional health was a wide method of utilization. But what we have seen again and again is that as we've reached the present time, although statistically speaking, it appears that as many as half of Americans listen to at least 12 hours of music a week. And this is according to Nielsen data from a couple of years ago, so the data might be a little bit different now. But a large percentage of Americans, for example, are listening to music with great regularity. But a number of studies have shown that people tend to pick music that actually just reinforces the emotional state that they're in. So, although we know that it has great therapeutic potential, and most of us can identify a moment in our lives that was marked potently by the memory of music being with it, we also are not necessarily innately capable of identifying the music that is good for us, utilizing it at the right time, and replicating that on our own. So our technology's aim is to identify the emotional state of the user, to give them the music they need in order to get to a more optimal emotional state, and then to do that essentially on demand and for a variety of different applications. So it's like taking a pharmacokinetic and a pharmacodynamic model and applying that to semantic space and to looking at emotion in different dimensions, so that we can match the right music for the right person.
That's fascinating. And so tell us a little bit more about how this technology works with that context in mind.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great question. So, the device is a software app, so it's pretty easy to use. And we take in a number of inputs, and then a person gets their personalized music, and they can listen to it much the way they listen to any of their favorite streaming services. So, it's a couple of buttons, and you answer a few questions, and then you get your music. As we are developing further integrations, we will also be working with hardware companies to enable pairing with heart rate variability, blood pressure, and a number of other factors that we can use to monitor biomarkers that are important and to lead to greater deep learning models. If people are familiar with deep learning, it's a type of machine learning that enables us to improve the user experience over time and through use.
Very interesting points. And it seems like quite a complex journey that you must have traveled to move from the psychology of music and the idea of how cultures have used music across the ages to developing a program that actually uses music in a therapeutic way with the impact potential on our mental health. So, what are the necessary steps that you and your company have taken to evaluate the effectiveness of these kind of solutions? And tell us about the challenges that you faced along the way and perhaps what you might tell someone else who would be considering a modality that might have some similarities, and perhaps how clinicians can play a role or would play a role in this process.
Great. Okay. Well, I'll answer those in order. Those are wonderful questions. Thank you for raising them. So, initially, I would say that the trajectory is complex and that I wasn't looking as much at neurology and neuroscience from an evolutionary perspective as it overlapped with ethnomusicology. I really putting most of the onus on an exploration of contemporary musical modalities. And granted, they're strong palimpsestual elements or elements that overlap again and again that can be seen through an historical lens. And certainly there are many different types of music from many eras that actually make their way into our music products. People have wide ranging musical tastes. Thus, someone who was born in Lagos will have potentially very different playlists than someone who was born in Brooklyn. So there are more than 52 dimensions in our patent that cover the right music for the right time, the right place, the combination, essentially the dose of music. And because it really is important for a person to enjoy the music, the degree of personalization is very necessary in the developing of this product. So, to answer the second note of what you addressed, what have we done to validate this? So, we have validated at Weill Cornell Medical College in a clinical trial with patients who had comorbid anxiety, either suspected or diagnosed, and who had interstitial lung disease. And as you'll very well be aware, and some of our listeners may not be aware, interstitial lung disease is a complex diagnosis that affects the ability of an individual to perform many quality of life activities that they certainly would enjoy being able to do sometimes even as simple as walking across the street without being breathless, exercising, being able to enjoy outings with their loved ones. There are severe limitations in this disease. So the pulmonary function tests that are necessary to follow the diagnosis of a patient with this disease are very uncomfortable, and patients often have anxiety. It's called anticipatory anxiety leading up to a pulmonary function test. So it was our hypothesis that by deploying the music to the patients prior to the pulmonary function test, we would be able to observe them in a point of high anxiety. So we used qualitative and quantitative measures, gold standard neuropsychiatric measures, and other measures to take in the data. And although it was a very small study, we had 70% of the cohort had at least a 50% reduction in anxiety. So we were quite pleased with the robustness of the results. And we have a number of further studies scheduled. Going on to the final node of what you asked, what would I suggest to someone who was looking to perhaps spin out their research into creating a brain and behavioral health tech company or a neuro-tech company? There are many things. One is get a great team. And I think the thing that I've benefited the most from has been having extraordinary advisors. I always want to be the least talented person in the room. So I feel very fortunate to have an astonishing cohort of co-founders and advisors and mentors. Peter Blumen, my co-founder and CEO of the company, is a 40-year veteran of Wall Street. He studied at Brown for computer science in his MS and then did his MBA at Wharton and has developed a large number of products and managed more than $1 billion. So he's very, very experienced in business where I certainly am not. And our co-founder, Jim Anderson, was the co-founder of About.com and then was the architect and inventor of a lot of the early technology at Spotify. So he's a veteran of tech with an astonishing track record and a wonderful person. And Wade McCullum is one of my best friends. He's like my brother, and he's a Broadway musician. So we have compatible skill sets, and we have a great trust and a great love of each other. We really are like a family. And I think that nothing really succeeds if you don't have that kind of relationship. So I would just suggest to people to please find champions. If you're going to do this, it's arduous, it's not glamorous. The challenges are many. We had difficulties in the midst of deploying during a global pandemic, which is really difficult. We would have done a number of further studies if we hadn't had these difficulties in the middle of the pandemic. So it set us back in some areas, but also presented opportunities to focus on further developing the back end of our technology and getting to the ability to scale faster.
It sounds like a very diverse and talented, as well as resilient team of people that you work with. So, thinking about this device, it sounds like a device that can bridge the gap or even work alongside other conventional treatment methodologies, such as medications, but also less conventional things like natural therapies and wearables and devices. And this is a topic that's often discussed on this podcast. So, thinking along these lines, how will the neuropositive solution work alongside other treatments? So, you've already told us about the reduction in anxiety with the pulmonary function tests, which is, a really meaningful contribution. Can you tell us about some of the other perhaps studies you have in the works or other findings? And then which wearables or devices, if any, can potentially complement the solution that neuropositive brings?
Those are really wonderful insights. And also tying back to the last element of the previous question, what can clinicians do? So tying those two together, I think there are a lot of applications we're very excited to pursue this year. One is an application for pain and anxiety. And so we are looking to deploy with our own brand app and then also with strategic partners. So we're working with partners who are, in some cases, directors of pain clinics, in other cases, orthopedics, and in some cases, psychiatrists. And we are deploying to their patients as a way to identify the potentiality of this tool as a scalable patient monitoring and as an adjunct psychiatric tool. So there's no doubt whatsoever that talk therapy and medication and other forms of traditional intervention are highly important and serve an absolutely irreplaceable role in fomenting emotional and mental health and brain and behavioral health. And yet, the care that people receive in these modalities is not continuous. So, as a cardiologist, I'm sure you saw patients continuously in a variety of different states. And one of the most challenging things is lack of adherence to medication protocols, and in some cases, the severity of adverse reactions to medications and interventions. So, what we're aiming to do is to be a potent adjunct that can be utilized on demand whilst a patient is not under a clinician's care, and then to deliver meaningful insights to the clinician as the relationship develops with the clinician and our company and with the patient on the other end. Insights that can be utilized to give more understanding of what's going on with the patient during the time that the patient's not being observed by the clinician in clinic. Then looking at the last modality of this, we hope to work with a number of technologies from the Oura Ring, which has been getting some great results in sleep particularly, to the Apple Watch, the Samsung Watch, Withings, Garmin. We also integrate with a number, as we were discussing earlier in the podcast, a number of other companies, and we're targeting different disease states and different comorbidities with each of these deployments across technologies. So in one, we're looking to help with weight management. In another, we are looking specifically at diabetes management and anxiety relating to diabetes management. And in another, we're looking at sleep. So each of these strategic B2B2C partnerships enables us to tap into another area, another vertical. And so we're studying the efficacy of our product in those deployments.
So, thinking about how an individual would use this technology, two questions. One, say somebody who is, out and about living their life, but dealing with these health or psychiatric mental health issues. What kind of time frame would they commit to this technology? And then the second part of my question is for patients in the hospital. Is this something that would be used, for example, someone in the intensive care unit or somebody who is hospitalized with surgery and having a lengthy recovery? How would this integrate in those ways?
Absolutely. Thank you for addressing those really interesting use cases. So I'll start backwards and then work towards the front of the question. So in perioperative care, we think that pre-intubation would be an ideal time to deploy the music. As we know, this is a time when patients experience fairly significant distress. I think also prior to admission for surgical intervention in waiting rooms would be an opportunity for patients to utilize the music via headset. The app with the headset is very easy to use, so a patient can get 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. The sessions are designed to be used as needed, and depending on the severity of the individual's specific condition. So if we'd be addressing anxiety prior to surgical intervention, prior to, for example, receiving oncological care on site in a clinic, prior to the perioperative visit, and then looking in a broader scape at, generally speaking, the indications of use, we look at high intensity training. So someone can use the app for exercise, though they can just put the headphones on, press the use case of exercise, and they'll get personalized music for exercise. Yoga, meditation, sleep, focus at work, focus for non-work contexts, stress reduction. So pain is another indication. So we're developing a growing cohort of use cases, but those are the ones to which we're going to market.
Fantastic. And do you get information about the individual ahead of time to develop the choices of music, or is the music based on the condition that you're addressing?
So the music is actually popular music. So we have a large repository of music, and our app actually deploys the music through a B2B API integration. So it enables pretty tremendous flexibility in terms of integration. And the music that people are getting is really based on the combination of their profile and the need for which they're using the music. And an individual's taste plays a significant role. So because it's highly automated thanks to the use of machine learning, we don't need to do any kind of prepping for the music. It's just the person just comes into the app, creates a profile, and from there, the information about the profile is stored, and then the use case of how a person is doing in the moment, plus what they want to listen to, leads to what music they get in each individual session that follows that.
Fascinating. So, this kind of segues into the next question I had about the idea that neuropositive leverages the AI and other computing techniques. Tell us a little bit more about that and more broadly your thoughts on the future of AI and healthcare in general.
Exactly, yes. So our algorithms, our patented technology uses recurrence equations. So we use those in addition to quite a number of different types of machine learning. And then as the product gains a user base, then we'll utilize a number of different deep learning modalities and models. And that will enable the product to become more and more personalized as a user utilizes the product. I think generally speaking, in neurotech and behavioral tech and mental health tech, we are going to see greater degrees of personalization across technologies. And I have concerns and hopes both ways. I think at this point, it would be great for more companies to work together. And I don't know exactly how I feel broadly speaking about the fact that it often feels like competition might not be the best way for companies that are moving towards trying to create solutions for patients to conceive of themselves in a market landscape. I would much prefer to find ways to collaborate with other mental health technologies and neurotechnologies to better achieve results for patients than I would prefer to see other people in the space as competitors. So I actually have engaged a number of people who might otherwise be considered competitors in developing integrations for end users. And some of these wonderful companies, I think, are doing great things. And we are amplifying mental health technologies by working together.
That's wonderful. I think the collaboration is going to be key going forward in the healthcare ecosystem. We're seeing rising costs of healthcare and more difficulty with accessibility at a global scale, not only here in the United States, but across the world. And when you think about the future of healthcare in regards to the quality of treatment and cost, how do you see medical grade music working within that framework? And what are the implications from a reimbursement or cost standpoint, and how this type of therapy is going to fit into the way that healthcare is paid for?
Well, I think we are in a time that is evolving perhaps so rapidly that it might be spurious to make assumptions about how we might address the economic landscape down the line, because what constitutes a need for FDA approval today might not be the same as what constitutes the need for FDA approval with 3 years' time or 5 years' time or 10 years' time. So I can't say that we'll never need to go the FDA approval route, but our current trajectory focuses on wellness, and thus the onus is on us to prove at scale that we are delivering an experience that is medical grade, but that is designed for wellness. So it's designed to attenuate symptoms of distress, but to primarily be an adjunct and a non-prescription based solution. So it is my current understanding, based on discussions with C-suite individuals at major healthcare insurance and pharma companies, that the current state in America in wellness enables us to focus on data gathering, on being very careful about what data it is that we collect, and doing so equitably, carefully, and creating very secure systems for that data, and on gathering as much evidence of efficacy as we can. So it is my hope that we will be reimbursable, or that we'll be entirely covered by insurance within the next couple of years. We're working as hard as we can to get to that ultimate objective, but we are keeping the price point for utilization at a level that is not prohibitive for many customers. I hope as we continue to develop these partnerships that we'll find that pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies will want to actually make investments in preventative care that will reward users for utilizing products like this before conditions exacerbate, so that we might see a reduction in the need for medications to attenuate cardiovascular disease, for example.
Yeah, those are fantastic points. And, prevention, as we know is key not only to keeping people healthy, but keeping the cost of care down. So, very exciting modality. If you think about the next 5 to 10 years, what's the ideal scenario for neuropositive, and where do you expect the technology to be in, say, 2030? And in terms of the neurotechnology space in general, what do you see in store for the future and how these technologies are going to continue to evolve?
Well, by 2030, I hope that we'll be available through the World Health Organization. I played a small role in helping to grow the Global Clinical Practice Network at Columbia University Psychiatry World Health Organization Collaborative. And it's a clinician network that allows anyone who is a registered certified clinician of mental health care to the WHO standard to receive network partnership in this specific program. And I would love to be able to deploy to all of those individuals so that all of their patients could utilize this. And in an ideal world, anyone who wants to have it can have it, and we'll have enough partners who will cover the cost. That cost will be non prohibitive. I believe very strongly in what we're doing and think that music is our inheritance. We, as humans, deserve the opportunity to access music that can enable us to achieve better lives, to live happier, healthier, more productive existences. I would say, in my more unbridled imaginations of the future, we achieve a more peaceful existence as a species when we are more peaceful within ourselves. And so it would be wonderful if we could someday play a small role in that. We're continuously developing products that we hope will enable individuals to achieve better, more personalized care. My predictions are, I'll kind of turn the question a bit on its head and say I have concerns. And I think I'm certainly not an expert on implants, so it's not something with which I'm speaking with tremendous authority, but something for which I have, I would say, fear and caution. That it seems that there are really a number of companies that are focused on invasive methods for neuromodulation, and that we don't know that that isn't doing no harm. We really don't. And if we can focus on finding ways to enable people to have better qualities of life with less severe repercussion, fewer symptoms, and with more of an emphasis on prevention, I think we might find greater ultimate adoption. I really don't know. It's a wild guess, but Neuralink makes me nervous, and a number of the other implants that we see going through approvals seem maybe needlessly invasive.
Very interesting points. Well, Yasmin, this was an intriguing and really thought provoking conversation. We covered a wide range of topics regarding the technology and the process that you're involved with. And can you give us some final advice for those wanting to stay connected to the innovations that are happening in medical grade music and in neuropositive? And we're also always interested in topical book recommendations or any other content that you might recommend on this subject.
Oh, okay. Well, I would love for anyone who's listening to the podcast to consider downloading a free copy of the app when we make it available through our partners or through our B2C app. So that should happen at the end of this quarter, beginning of next quarter. So, be an early open user if you'd like. You can find our updates primarily on LinkedIn, and our webpage gives very little information. We're technically still in stealth mode, but we can give you links and a code for TechLink Health members to get free downloads. I really think that Andrew Huberman's writing is great. And if anyone is looking to dive more deeply into the breadth of neuroscience, he's a great person to follow. He also has a brilliant podcast. So he might be someone to look up.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, Huberman Labs is the podcast I've recently been following, and I agree. It is fantastic. It's just such a breadth of topics. So I, for one, will definitely be looking out for the Neuropositive app and following your company. I think the work you're doing is intriguing and has so much potential for so many health conditions. So I want to thank you again for joining us today on the TechLink Health podcast and look forward to seeing what you all do in the future.
Thank you so much, Sarah. The pleasure's mine.
Thanks for listening to this episode. TechLink Health is a healthcare advisory platform for consumers and organizations to stay informed with the latest insights while connecting with healthcare experts for telehealth, e-consults, and consulting services. For more details, visit www.techlink.health.